sang test 2 của Cambridge. Và bọn em nhớ nhá, cái chủ đề của này nó sẽ tập trung vào festival này, kiểm duyệt về thông tin, môn đề rất khó. Và thứ ba nữa là nói về media nhá. Còn cái chủ đề của test 1 vừa rồi thì bọn em tiếp cận là chủ đề chủ yếu về giáo dục, đúng không? Ok, thì mỗi chủ đề, mỗi cái test nó thường hướng tới một cái chủ đề lớn. Thì chúng ta qua đấy chúng ta sẽ mở rộng được từ vựng và biết cách nói nhá. Chúc các bạn thành công.
The first question in part 1. Tell me about the most important festival in your country.
Well, I think Vietnam is a country of festival. According to the social statistics, every month there's about like 2 festivals, taking place. But the festival, I think, which is the most essential, that is Tet holiday, Well, firstly, because in Tet holiday, most people have more than 2 weeks of vacation, and that's why they love the festival. In addition, I think it's a very, occasion in which like people coming from different walks of life, they are reunited. Like, let me take an example of my family. Well, every year, we're going to different locations and we are working, and only when the Tet holiday is coming do we come back, to our hometown. We enjoy the cozy atmosphere and meals together, and that's why I'm so happy that Tet holiday is coming soon in 10 days.
Do you think festivals are important for a country?
Yeah, on one hand, while the appearance of festival has some advantages. First of all, we feel entertained and relaxed after a few days of working. Now we have the whole vacation, staying at home, listening to music, meeting friends. Like, in addition, and this very special point in the Tet holiday, in the festival, that is, we receive lucky money. We become richer and richer. And last year, one of my nephews received 4 million Vietnamese lucky money just only in one festival Tet holiday, and that's why I think it's beneficial for the youngster. On the other hand, it causes a serious damage, financial damage to the adults, because they have to pay so much money. The salary every month is only 1 or 2 million, and now they have to give the lucky money to children with more than 4 million, They really suffer in that festival. What else I'm talking about? That is, the festivals in the modern life have been somehow commercialized. What I mean by commercialization, right? It's not about the meaning of people loving each other, giving the presents in the pure sense, right? While the producers of the products, right? The sellers, they PR and market, just to make sure that people should buy products, people should buy the present to give each other, in the festival. As a result, people waste a big amount of money, So that is not a good factor in the festival. And another thing I want to mention, that the accident. During the festival in Vietnam, people drink, greatly. They can hardly control their vehicles, and as a result, the collision happens. And while the number suffering the serious accident is increasing in the hospital, driving doctors crazy, So festival have both advantages and disadvantages.
So that is the end of part 1. So now we move to part 2. Describe a film or TV program which has made a strong impression on you. Here's your cue card. You have 1 minute for note taking and 2 minutes for giving the answer.
So I have 60 seconds?
Yeah, only 60 seconds.
Writing
notes.
the main ideas, and 2 minutes of speaking. Okay. The favorite movie?
Yeah. Time's up.
Well, I'm not a fan of movie. Yeah, during the days, most of the time I'm studying IELTS, in preparation for studying abroad. But to answer your question, I think the most impressive movie that I have ever seen in my life, that is Gone with the Wind. You know, it's adapted from a famous novel by Margaret Mitchell in 1930. It was considered resounding success, earning, just the admiration of more than 10 million fans worldwide. And I think there's some reason explaining why the movie became one of the greatest hits at the time. Just like, first of all, I'm talking about the content. The movie reflects authentically the civil war between the North and the South. And the war is so fierce, that, just like most of Americans at that time were actually, protesting against the fact that while the North, just like kind of like follow the industrialization, while the South, just supported, the ideas of slavery. But, by the end of the Civil War, America actually become more has become more united. That's why the Civil War, just strongly reflected in that movie, and it reminds us of historical events in America. Secondly, I'm talking about the love in that movie. In the very normal, just movies that I have seen in my life, that two people falling in love with each other and then they get married, and if there's some problem arising, then they decide to get divorced, right? The clearest, just like say between love and not loving each other. But in the very novel, the movie, by Margaret Mitchell, Gone with the Wind, it's very hard to, identify the fact that whether, just like the very famous and the main character, that is, Scarlett love Red Butler or not. While at the beginning of the movie, while he looking at, just like Red Butler as a very bad man, with stupid thinking that the North wins over, just the South, he's the only person against the war, and everybody hits him, and so does, the Scarlett character. However, to the story, people begin to realize that what Red Butler saying, predicting the future of America between the North and the South war is totally correct, and that's how people admire him. Begin to respect, him, and that's how just also the personality, the character, just like Scarlett, right? Somehow, look at him with different eyes, and then her love for him goes gradually, step by step. And by the end of the movie, she suddenly recognized that the only person who understands her deeply, that is, Red Butler. And unfortunately, that is the time Red Butler wants to say goodbye to Scarlett. However, the very saying of the movie at the end, that tomorrow is another day, somehow arouses in us the optimistic picture that finally Red Butler would come back to Scarlett. So that is a very, unexpected ending of the story, and somehow the very provoking, content of story that really impresses me, and I actually want to write a novel like that one, but I don't know how to begin and how to end.
Yeah, so now we move to part 3. Do you think the cinema has increased or decreased in popularity in recent years?
Cinema now I think has gained popularity for some reasons, right? Years ago when I watch movies in the cinema, I think most of the time I went to the cinema and I watch it, and my impression was about seeing, watching, and going home. That's it. Right now, honestly, with the appearance of 3D and 4D, just like technology, while the movies actually have been recreated, authentically to the very detail that make us like we're living in the movie. When you're watching the 4D movie, you can see and feel how the actions, just are going in the movie. It seems like we are one of the main characters in the movies, right? Yeah, that's not a very impressive point of the cinema nowadays, that attract a great amount of youngsters, to go to the cinema theater. However, I want to talk about the ticket. Ooh. When I have to pay more than $5 for a movie in Vincom centers, I think that's exorbitant. It's unreasonable because I'm a student. How could I have more than $5? Right? Only when the ticket discount, is given to student, do I have the intention of going to the cinema. Otherwise, I buy the Chinese CD copy. Just watch at home and I don't have to pay money. Anyway, the cinema has both good and bad sides over the years, right?
What are the advantages and disadvantages of making films of real life events?
Yeah, making films of real life events.
Real life events.
Oh, it's far from easy, Yeah, there's some reason why just the producers and the script writers fight so hard to recreate such a movie which exactly similar to the truth. Well, first of all, I'm talking about the historical evidence, right? Now, when you have to research, right, an enormous sources of scientific evidence, right, and then you have to make sure that that evidence is actually honest and actually authentic or not. It takes a long time researching. Besides, I'm talking about technological part. For example, in order to recreate a movie Titanic, which reflects and depicts the incidents of the car, sinking into, not the car, sorry, the ship sinking into the ocean, right? Then the producer had to, collect, or maybe they have to make sure that the Titanic ship look exactly resembles the original ship. Wow, it's a waste of money.
What are the advantages and disadvantages of making films of real life events?
Yeah, real life movies, right, are not easily, recreated for some reason. First of all, I'm talking about the technological point. For example, when I just want to make a real life event about the history in Vietnam, well, I have to make sure in my movies, right, the battlefields, right, the kind of weapons, the guns, the uniforms, all of these must resemble the past, and it takes a lot of money to invest in producing these condition for the producers and script writers, right, to make sure the content exactly the same as that in the past. In addition, I'm talking about, that is the source of materials and historical events. What I mean by the source, because the events of the past, could be, how can I say, analyzed from different perspectives. For some people think, right, these, events that we are organizing today actually reflect the truth of the past, right? But according to some other kinds of historians, right, who research the topic, and they realize that no, that is not the truth, right? So in order to reach the consensus on the content, to make sure these contents simulate the truth, well, it takes a lot of time, right? And it actually requires the serious research on it. For these two reasons, I think that making real life events is far from easy.
The next question, how important do you think it is for a filmmaker to remain true to the original story?
Well, when a filmmakers, right, remain really honest to the content of the story, well, it won't provide us an insightful understanding into the topic. For instance, if I want to discover and dig deeper in Vietnamese history, I'm watching the real life movies like that one, I can know that how hard Vietnamese people had to sacrifice for thousands of years, hundreds of years, in order to protect the freedom of the country. I won't be nurturing the national pride and love for my nation, patriotism. On the other hand, I think that remaining true to the historical events, right, can cause some disadvantages, especially in the modern life. Let me take an example, the relationship between China and Japan now has been really improved recently, right? Well, but if you want to create a kind of a historical movie depicting the war between China China and between Japan. But the thing here is that the Japanese people made a point in the movies that while Chinese people attack them violently and cruelly and unfairly, as a consequence, right, watchers of Japanese just like culture and movies, right, believe that Chinese people were actually seen as bad people, right? That is my assumption. It could not be real, right? Yeah, that really aroused in Chinese people even the hatred against Japan, because they say, oh no, Japan destroyed the truth. Chinese people never did that one in the past, right? And that's how the conflict between two countries happened. So what I mean is that remaining true to the historical events somehow can have adverse effect on the bilateral and multilateral relationship between countries, right? Therefore, in order to create that movie, we have to be very cautious of the content, right? To remain, the relationship between them. And to make sure we have true understanding, but not, personally and unfairly provoke.
Should films and television be censored, or should we be free to choose what we can see?
Censorship is a controversial issue. Some people believe censorship is essential in order, just to provide against our kind of like comprehensive understanding of the content we're watching on on media. Besides, like for political reasons, I think censorship is irreplaceable. Why? Let me take another example like this one, right? In Vietnam, we follow actually the one party ideology, right? Now, if like the government do not censor the materials in which emphasize the importance of multi-party, right, encourages the democratic, society, while the conflict in political ideology when happens and the youngster in Vietnam grow up believe multi-party thinking is encouraged, is embraced, right? As a result, it doesn't serve the political government in Vietnam. Therefore, censorship is important. However, the problem is, right, I'm talking about some movies in which, like the writers and the script producers, they want to create a movie with this meaning message, right? They to portray the beauty of American people. But in American Beauty movie, in Vietnam, we're removing some sexual images that we believe which are unsuitable. As a result, the meaning of the writer, just like somehow has been distorted, right? And to some extent, while censorship is somehow believed to violate the human right. What is a human right? Every person is born to say what they mean, to show the truth, and now if the government stop them from doing that one, then people think that the government actually really stifle their human rights, right? And another reason I think that censorship it's against, just like the kind of like, human rights in that, I'm talking about some kind of content of the newspapers, right? Yeah, some newspapers, right, the journalists want to say the truth about the situations that they see with their eyes and evidence, and now with censorship coming along, right, these contents are not shown to the public. That's how we have misleading thinking toward what we see. Censorship has both advantages and disadvantages. Maybe I'm talking about another point, advantage of censorship, that if the government do not censor, right, maybe for the sake of profit, producers can betray the violent images, right, on television and media will have adverse effect on children, the young generation. So all the reasons above, I think censorship is advantageous and disadvantageous.
And the last question, how do you think censorship laws will change in the next 20 years?
In 20 years, censorship still exists, right? Why I think it's still part of our life? Because every country has a different belief, different culture and political, just like faith. For instance, right, in Islamic culture, right, the belief of these people is that they don't want, the young generation or the people in general to know what is meant by adultery, to see the violent or the sexual images, right? Yeah, however, in Western culture, they embrace, the open thinking towards sex, and that's why on the media they still show the sexual images, right? So that's why in Islamic culture, any kind of action depicting the sexual images will be seen as sinful, and censorship will take place therefore. So the difference in culture and in political belief explain why censorship, I think, in 30 years or even 40 years still exists. Oh.